Okay guys, so this is the second part of the Unit 2 final exam review, or final exam review sheet, I should say. So let's take a look at number 6 through 8. So we're at the point where we're writing equations and graphing trig functions. So number 6 says write the equation for the trig function based on the graph, and by below we mean to the right. So it doesn't ask us to write it specifically in terms of sine or cosine. We get to pick. I noticed that right at 0, 0, it's crossing through the middle. So I think the best thing to do is do this in terms of sine. A, B, C, and D. Now remember, B is not the length of a cycle. It's how many cycles there are in 2 pi. Okay, so let's start with A. A is the amplitude from the center. We go up 2 and down 2, so my stretch is 2. It's not flipped because sine is supposed to go up first, and this does go up first. B, again, is the number of cycles in 2 pi. So when I look at this, here's 1 complete cycle. Here's 2 complete cycles. So I went 1, 2 cycles, so B is 2. Another way to think about that is the length of 1 cycle. Since this is 2 pi, this is just pi. So remember, if I want to do the period, I know that the period is 2 pi over B. We know that the period here is pi. So if I'm going to solve this, I'm going to multiply both sides by pi. So in this case, if I have b pi equals 2 pi, I could cross off the pi's, then I know that b has to be 2. C is my phase shift. Notice sine's supposed to start right at 0, 0, and it does, so there's no phase shift. And we're not shifted up or down at all, so D is also going to be none. So my equation is going to be y equals a, so 2, sine of 2x. There's no phase shift, so I could put the 2 in front of the parentheses, but I can leave it just like that. You don't even need the parentheses. You could also just write that as 2 sine of 2x with no parentheses. Okay, let's shift down to graphing. This is a cosine graph. Let's see if we can list our A, B, C, and D. Our amplitude is always positive, so our amplitude is 3, but we notice it's negative. That means it's going to be flipped. Notice there's no parentheses here, so there's no phase shift. Nothing's being added or subtracted inside, and nothing's being added or subtracted at the end. My B value is 2. That means that we have 2 cycles in 2 pi. So if I want the period, that's the length of 1 cycle, I need to do 2 pi divided by B. B is 2, so the length of 1 cycle is pi. So the first thing that I'm going to do is say I want to graph out to 2 pi, but there's going to be 2 full cycles in 2 pi. So I need all my key points here, and I need all my key points here. So I'm going to do my key points here. I'm going to do my key points here. And when we did this way back in Unit 2, we said we're always going to label at least our first set of key points. So half of pi is pi over 2. Half of pi over 2 is a quarter, or pi over 4. So 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. Okay. There was no vertical shift. My amplitude is 3, so I'm going to go up to 3 and down to negative 3. So if I think about this, I've taken care of this. I've taken care of this. I can jump to graphing now. Sine starts at the top, or sorry, not sine. Cosine starts at the top, but this is flipped. So I am going to start at the bottom. And then at each key point, I just go like through my bottom, middle, top, middle, bottom, middle, top, middle, and then back to the bottom. Now we have to think about if I have a phase shift. If I have a phase shift, this is just going to be a dotted line because I'm still going to have to shift it, but you'll notice that there's none of these, right? I don't have to worry, so I've taken care of these, so this is my final answer. We want to give this as nice of a curved shape as we can. This shouldn't look like these shouldn't be V's. They should be curved as best as we can. Okay. If I just recap this real fast, you'll notice that it says that my amplitude was 3. So I went up and down to 3 and negative 3. The negative means it's flipped, so cosine started at the bottom. And then this told me that I should have 2 full cycles in 2 pi, and you'll notice I got 2 full cycles. Here's my first cycle. Here's my second cycle. Let's do another one. Okay, here is... this is a sine graph. Let's figure out our A, B, C, and D. My amplitude is 2. It's not flipped this time. Okay, I haven't factored this out yet, so the first thing I need to do is factor out that 2. I'm dividing by 2, so if I divide this by 2, I'm left with x. If I divide this by 2, I have a half. I'm cutting a half in half. That's going to give me pi over 4. So my b is 2, but now I can see my phase shift. My phase shift has a plus sign, but remember things inside of grouping symbols like parentheses or brackets are going to be the opposite. So we're going left pi over 4. And then there's nothing at the end. There's no shift up or down. So if you were to look at your graphing guidelines, I did it a little out of order for 7. We normally start with our vertical shift. There's no vertical shift. And then we label our amplitude. So up 2 and down 2. Then I'm going to look at my period. Notice that there should be 2 full cycles. So the period should be 2 pi divided by b, which is 2. So my period is pi. So the next thing I'm going to do is say, okay, we're going to graph out to 2 pi, but there's going to be 2 full cycles. So here's going to be cycle 1. Here's going to be cycle 2. And each cycle needs its key point. So I'm going to break this, and then I'm going to break this up. You need to label this first group. So this is the same as what we just did above. So pi over 4, pi over 2, and 3 pi over 4. So notice I've taken care of my amplitude and my vertical shift. We did that first. Now I've taken care of the fact that I have 2 cycles. We're going to have this left over in a minute. So sine starts in the middle. There's no flipping, so we're going to go up first. Remember when we graph, our final answer is always a solid line. So I need to think about, can I connect these now, or do I need to make a dotted line? Well, it's going to have to be a dotted line because I haven't done my phase shift yet. So here's where I'm at right now. You don't even have to put this in if you don't want. You can just immediately shift your dots, but I find this helpful. It's kind of just up to you. But if I am going to do a dotted line, eventually I am going to have to either do it with a solid line or another color. I like to shift to another color. Everything's getting shifted back pi over 4. We're really fortunate. Pi over 4 is just 1 tick mark. So everything's going backwards. That's going back. That's going back. That's going back. You can pattern once you've started. So I'm just going to follow my pattern in middle, or sorry, bottom, middle, top, middle, bottom, middle, top. Started and end at the same place. Here's cycle 1. Here's cycle 2. So I've taken care of my phase shift now. Remember, your final answer should be a solid line. If you have more than one solid line, you need to make sure you indicate which color it is that you want your final answer to be. So that's the whole review on graphing. Make sure you review the notes that we did in class, just help you remember the process, and make sure you guys can identify A, B, C, and D really easily.